Back in the garage today, back in the garage today. What's going on, guys? Back in the garage today, working on my 2016 KTM 1290 Super Adventure. I'm actually going to be working on my tailgate here in just a moment. But those of you running modern day KTM Adventure bikes, they have a tubeless tire system or a tubeless wheel system, whatever you want to call it. And the way it works, unlike Ducati, BMW, Yamaha, they all have different methods. With KTM, we actually have a big rubber gasket that seals the spokes inside the rim. And if you ever read through the service manual, you'll see that you should replace these about every 5 years, and I'm well past that mark, so I'm going to get mine replaced tonight. The other thing, I have replaced one once before on my buddy's bike. It's not a difficult job. It doesn't require a lot of tools to do it. For the purposes of today's video, if you don't know how to remove the wheels from your bike, I'm going to link that video up here. You also need to remove the tires, and I'm not going to show that. There's plenty of videos out there showing how to remove tires, or you can take them to your dealer or mechanic or whatever and have them pulled off. But I'm going to show you the couple of little tools you need, the parts you need, and then how to do the job. All right, so let's get started with the parts. Now, if you're running an R model that has the 2118, these parts aren't going to work for you. But if you're running one of the models that has the 19-inch front, 17-inch rear, these should work. Obviously, check your make, model, and year. But on my bike, which is a 2016, so this will definitely fit the 15 through 17 KTM 1290 Super Adventures. This is the rim band that's going to go on the front. In case you can't read it, I'll put the part number up on the screen. Also, everything will be linked down in the description below. This part's kind of optional if you want to replace it, but hey, while you're in there, you might as well. We also have the rubber gasket for the front. Once again, part number on the screen, link down below. And if we take a look at this, this is basically what it looks like. I'll show you how it goes on here in just a few moments, because we are going to start with the front wheel. Same sort of deal for the rear wheel. Obviously, we need a 17 on here, much thicker rim tape or rim band, whatever you want to call it. And then we obviously, once again, part number on the screen, we obviously have a much thicker rear wheel gasket that goes on here. It also goes on just a little bit differently than the front. As for tools, you really only need a couple of things. So one thing you're going to need is a 12mm wrench. And then while KTM, you know, in their service manual calls for some tire lube, and you can definitely use that, and we may use it tonight. I found last time just some soapy water worked just fine in a spray bottle. Some nitro gloves aren't a bad idea. We're also going to need a bolt and a nut, and I'll show you what that's for in a moment. But let me get some of this cleared off so we can work on this front rim, and I'll show you what we need to do. Okay, so with the valve cap and valve core removed, we've got this Tpms sensor that sits down here. Now what we're going to do, and it's going to be a little hard to show on camera, is we're going to take our 12mm wrench. We want to hold this sensor down here because we don't want it spinning around. We don't want to break it. And we're going to go up here on the lock nut for the Tpms sensor or valve, and we're just going to spin this off. One more important thing to note. Look at the orientation of this when you take it off to make sure you put it back in the same orientation. You don't want it flipped around this way. And then once it's loose enough, you should just be able to spin it off by hand. And then simply press it down through. And this gasket may hold you a little bit. Pull that out, just put your nut back on here and set this aside right now for safekeeping. Okay, so this next part, if you follow the service manual, they say to just take a knife and cut it. Because this one's working, I think it's a good idea to have a backup. Obviously, you know, probably not a long-term solution since it's so old, but just to keep it in one piece, if you just take a small flat blade screwdriver and get it in between the rim and the gasket, you should be able to pull it back, and then once you pull it back, you should be able to start to get this gasket off of here. You can see that lip starting to come out. Then you can get kind of a big chunk of it. And then just work it all the way around the rim, both sides of the seal, and get it all loosened up. Alright, so now with it loose, it's simply a matter of pulling it off of the rim. And we got it removed. Now the next thing we're going to do is remove the rim tape, because like I said, I'm going to replace mine. I'm just going to get in there behind it, lift it up, run my fingers around to loosen it up off the spokes, and then pop it off of there. Now the next thing we want to do, and you can tell this rim's pretty clean, but I still want to go in. I'm going to use a little bit of soapy water and a towel, clean this up, wipe it down so it's nice and you know, dry and clean. And then when we come back, we're going to get the new rim tape on and the new gasket. All right, so our rim tape basically just looks like a grown-up fruit roll-up. Now, something we need to be aware of here, there is a hole in it, and we are going to have to line that up with where our Tpms sensor or tire valve goes in. I mentioned earlier you're going to need a nut and a bolt. Just find something that fits in there, because what we're going to do is we're going to line this up over here, and then we're going to put this bolt through with this nut. You might need an extra washer on it, and that's just going to help hold this in place as we try to get the rest of the tape around. And honestly, we're going to do the same thing for the gasket here in just a second. So let's get to doing this. So you can see all I've done here, I just use this washer and this bolt, and then we look up here. You don't have to tighten it down or anything, it's just to help hold it in place. Now make sure this is all lying flat all the way around, and you are going to have to stretch it. Make sure it does not twist up on you though. And then what you want to do is go around and make sure it's covering up every single one of those spokes. We look pretty good. Alright, next up is going to be the actual gasket. And you can see we've got this ridge here. So when we go to put this in, we need to make sure all of these grooves are sealed up all around the rim on both sides. We're going to do basically the same thing we did before. We're going to pull this bolt washer nut back out, and we're going to get this kind of set in place. But the one thing I want to do is spray this down with some soapy water, because it will make it easier to manipulate when we get it onto the rim, and help it slide on a little bit easier, and also help us get it into those grooves a little bit easier. It's also a good time to check to make sure your rim tape didn't slide too much. If it did, you should be able to slide it back fairly easily. Alright, so first up, we're not super concerned about getting it all lined up. We just need to get it on the rim. It does help if you've got a buddy, but I'm pretty sure I can get this done solo. Alright, we've got it over the rim, and now unfortunately there is no real cheat method to get this thing sealed in. We're just going to have to work it around piece by piece and make sure we've got it exactly in place where we need it so it'll seal. So you can see all I'm doing is just working this bad boy around. So give me a few minutes and I'll show you what the finished product looks like. Alright, so we got everything on here, and all you want to do, just keep going around, make sure you've got that gasket pressed all the way into place. If it gets difficult, that's what the soapy water's for. Just lubricate it a little bit and it should pop into place. And then obviously we want to make sure we still got our hole lined up here, which we do. Next up, we're going to take our Tpms sensor, we're going to put it back into place, and then we're going to torque it down to 12 Newton meters, and we're done with the front wheel. I mean, we still got to put tires back on and put it back on the bike, but for the purposes of this video, learning how to change these things, we're pretty much done with the front. One other quick thing, before you torque this down to the 12 Newton meters, make sure you use some blue Loctite on it to help hold it in place. There we go, and got it all sealed up. Now we're going to move on to the rear. All right, so rear wheel pretty much the same. We got to get this Tpms sensor out first using our 12 millimeter. Again, make sure you pay attention to the orientation. We're just going to set this aside, and we're essentially going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to get in here and we're going to start to peel this back. And we're going to pull it off. Now, like I said, I like to use a little flat blade screwdriver. So that one was definitely more of a pain. We're going to do the same thing we did before. We're just going to work this out over the rim now. Losing my glove. Alright, got the big gasket off the rear. Same thing here. Now you'll notice, hopefully you guys can see it, yeah, on the camera here. You'll notice this cutout's a little bit different. It doesn't have a perfect hole there. It's just got a little half moon on this piece of rim tape. This one's sealed on here pretty good. Tell you what, we're not even gonna try to save this. We're just gonna cut this one off. And now we're gonna do the same thing. It's actually not too dirty, but there are a few spots in here. We're gonna take some soapy water and a rag, get this cleaned up, and then we're gonna get our new piece of tape on there. All right, so with our rear wheel rim tape, we're gonna get it unwound. And then we're gonna look for that half moon cutout, because we need that to be around our where our valve stem goes in. So we'll just get this kind of set up. We're just gonna have to eyeball it a little bit to get started. Obviously make sure you're not twisted up, which I am somehow. There we go. There we go. And then we just got to pull this thing back, and it's going to take some. And now you just want to make sure this thing's good and centered all the way around the rim, and then it's covering up all the spokes. This one's actually fairly easy to get lined up because it's not quite as precise. There we go. Now we're ready for the gasket. Like I said, just make sure that half moon is lined up. So something to be aware of on the rear, obviously this has to be lined up in this orientation because that's where the hole is in the rim to get our Tpms sensor through. Definitely spray this one down big time with some soapy water because it is going to be a little bit more difficult to get over the rim than the front one was. Now the one thing we want to do is go back to that bolt to help hold this in place temporarily. It's not going to be perfect, but at least keep us somewhere close, and then we'll recheck it. All right, we got it over. Now we just want to get it all the way over. Nothing's got to be perfect yet. Next thing we want to do, take this bolt out and make sure that this didn't move on us, because we don't want to be popping this seal back in if we can't get our Tpms sensor through. So we are off a little bit, so the way you fix that, and you might have sprayed some more soapy water on it, is basically you're just going to slide it over. That looks pretty well lined up. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and pop in the ridges right around the hole there. You don't have to go too far, just enough. Get them started. Now we'll put our bolt back in, and then we just have to work our way around the rim. Now I will show you something cool they did, at least on this bike, on the rear rim, to supposedly make it a little bit easier. Okay, so hopefully the camera will pick this up. There are these little ridges here. What we want to do is count off about 5 and then push in there, and then go down 5 more and push in there, and then we can come back and fill them in. You kind of want to stagger the sides a little bit. You don't want to do both of these. Do this one, go down about 3 off this one, and then go down 5, 5, 5, 5. Work your way around. It will make the job a little bit easier and take a little bit less time and a little bit less effort. So you can probably tell on these little markings, obviously I don't have it all the way in, but I've gone all the way around the rim, just knocking in every fifth one and staggering it on this side. Now what I should be able to do a little bit easier is, you see I'm just able to just push that in, and it's not near the amount of pressure, you know, you need when you're getting those first ones in. It makes life a little easier. So I'm gonna go all the way around the rim on both sides, make sure everything's sealed up, and then we're gonna get our TPMS sensor back in and we'll be wrapping up. All right, so one last time, make sure you go around, you've got it sealed on both sides. Sometimes it's actually easier to do it feeling with your fingers than it is looking at it. Your eyes can kind of play tricks on you a little bit, but if it feels good and sealed up, then we can go ahead and pull this bolt back out, and we're gonna use a little bit of blue Loctite on the TPMS sensor and torque that down to 12 Newton meters, and we're done. All right, so all done. That's how you change the rim tape and wheel gaskets on one of these KTM Adventure bikes. Like I said, part numbers for my bike, this specific model, will be linked down below, and I put them up on the screen and stuff. Obviously double check, make sure you're getting the right part numbers for your bike. The other thing I just want you guys to be aware of for a minute, if you do mount your own tires or you take them to a mechanic and have them put on, don't be surprised if you do the spray bottle method around the spokes, that for the first hour or two, you're gonna get a little bit of air pushing out around there, and you're probably gonna go, oh crap, I messed up and I punctured the gasket and it's leaking. That's not the case. When we go to put these gaskets on, we're trapping a little bit of air in there in between the gasket, the rim tape, and the rim, so it is gonna push a little bit out. Obviously, fill your tires up to the correct pressure, check them again the next day, go out and ride it, check them again, you know, once they cool back down. Make sure your tire pressure is staying consistent. If you're losing tire pressure, then you probably did something wrong. You didn't get the gasket sealed properly, or, you know, you punched a hole in it, or you know, it might even be leaking around the TPMS sensor. So check all those things. But I just don't want you to freak out if there is a little bit of airflow coming around the spokes early on. Totally normal. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did it, so anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, considering that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, well, this is the place to be. If you have any questions about this process, let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them. Also, I'll you know, I linked that video earlier for how to put the wheels back on the bike. You got to figure out the tires yourself. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.